Before we go any further, make sure you're subscribed to the Legacy of Survival channel and share this with someone who actually cares about history, not just surface-level trivia. What we're talking about today isn't nostalgia or, food romance. It's about a wartime bread that quietly prevented disease, sustained prisoners, soldiers and civilians, and solved nutritional problems we somehow recreated in the modern world. If you're serious about history, preparedness, or understanding how past societies survived systemic collapse, this episode matters. During the Second World War, starvation wasn't always what killed people first. Disease did. Pellagra, beriberi, anemia, digestive collapse, immune failure. In prisoner-of-war camps, besieged cities and occupied territories, calories alone were not enough. What saved many lives was not meat, not sugar, not supplements, but a dense, sour, dark loaf that most people today wouldn't touch. This bread wasn't a comfort food. It was a survival tool. What made this bread different was not one miracle ingredient, but the way it was made. Across Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, Germany and parts of the Soviet Union, long-fermented whole-grain rye bread became a dietary anchor. In German civilian rations and prisoner-of-war camp distributions, a version known as Kommissbrot was issued because it lasted, resisted mold, and delivered nutrients efficiently. In the Soviet Union, black rye bread filled the same role, even during the siege of Leningrad. These loaves were heavy, sour, and slow to digest in the best way possible. They stabilized blood sugar, fed gut bacteria, and prevented deficiency diseases that white bread actively caused. The disease prevention came down to fermentation. Whole grains contain phytates, compounds that bind minerals like iron, zinc and magnesium, making them unavailable to the body. Modern bread skips fermentation, so those minerals pass straight through you unused. Wartime bakers didn't have that luxury. Sourdough fermentation broke down phytates naturally, unlocking minerals at the exact moment people needed them most. This mattered in places like prisoner-of-war camps run by Nazi Germany, where prisoners lived on bread and thin soup for months. Where refined bread caused neurological collapse and wasting, fermented rye bread slowed that decline. This bread also preserved B vitamins that white flour strips away. Thiamine deficiency leads to beriberi, which crippled armies long before the Second World War. Niacin deficiency causes pellagra, responsible for cognitive decline and skin lesions seen in famine populations. Whole-grain rye sourdough, you see, retained and protected these nutrients. That wasn't theory. Military doctors documented lower incidence of deficiency diseases where traditional bread remained part of the ration system. In contrast, regions pushed toward refined wheat flour saw spikes in illness within just a few months. Another overlooked factor was shelf life. This bread resisted spoilage without refrigeration. The acidity from fermentation suppressed harmful bacteria and mold. A loaf could last weeks wrapped in cloth. In urban warfare conditions, where bakeries were bombed and supply lines collapsed, this really mattered. People could bake once, store safely, and ration intelligently. Modern bread molds in days because it's biologically naked. Wartime bread was, hostile to pathogens by design. So why did we stop baking it? The answer isn't mystery, it's economics. After the war, industrial milling prioritized speed, whiteness and uniformity. Roller mills stripped grain down to starch because it's stored better for factories, not humans. Fermentation takes time, and time doesn't scale profitably. Governments promoted white bread as modern, clean, and aspirational. The nutritional consequences took decades to surface, long after the connection to bread had faded from public memory. This matters now more than ever. Urban survival today doesn't mean, living off tactical rations forever. It means building systems that prevent slow failure. You can apply this lesson directly. If you live in a city and want resilience, learn to bake one loaf correctly rather than hoarding empty calories. Use whole rye or whole wheat, grind it coarse, ferment it with a true sourdough starter for at least 24 hours, and bake it dense. You are not aiming for softness. You are aiming for stability, nutrition, and longevity. One loaf like this can replace multiple modern meals nutritionally. Historically, people didn't eat this bread alone. They paired it with fermented vegetables, animal fat, or thin soups. That combination protected gut health and immunity under extreme stress. Even in prisoner-of-war conditions documented after liberation, prisoners who received fermented bread fared better cognitively and physically than those surviving on refined starch. This wasn't comfort. It was biochemical survival. If you're serious about preparedness, this is not optional knowledge. Bread can be a liability or a shield. The Second World War proved that the difference lies in fermentation, grain integrity, and patience. The past solved problems we are, frankly, recreating through convenience and ignorance. If this kind of deep, practical history matters to you, subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel and share this with someone who still thinks bread is just filler. History already paid the price for forgetting this. We don't have to do it again.